Hi guys, tried to be normal here. August 20th, 2019. I got a couple articles I'd like to go over with you here. One is from the Gateway Pundit. Representative Matt Gaetz slams taxpayer-funded testing using aborted fetuses in laboratory animals. This is something that I really wasn't even aware of, or at least it wasn't in the forefront of my thoughts until I saw this article. Republican Representative Matt Gaetz has responded to a new report from taxpayer watchdog group White Coat Waste Project, which I hadn't heard of until now, and Pro-Life San Francisco that found millions of dollars are being spent on disturbing tests combining live animals and aborted fetus remains. Let me say that last part again. Disturbing tests combining live animals and aborted fetus remains. Representative Gaetz told the Gateway Pundit that the findings have bolstered his commitment to fighting against these unnecessary and inhumane experiments. I can't, right at this point, I can't even imagine what they hope to gain. I mean, this kind of reminds me of, what's that, Dr. Mengele taking parts off some people and sewing it on to others and doing this combining human and animal things. It's disgusting. Let's go on. As a staunch pro-life advocate and animal welfare supporter, I'm disgusted that taxpayers are being forced to pay for sick and twisted experiments in which human baby parts from elective abortions are crudely implanted into lab animals that are then also killed and dissected. These disturbing new revelations about NIH-funded human fetal tissue research on animals have bolstered my commitment to fighting against this unnecessary and inhumane practice that harms the most vulnerable among us in society. Both parties to this, both fetuses and animals, have no one to speak for them. They can't speak for themselves, so while the Trump administration has stopped funding the internal National Institutes of Health experimentation that used aborted human fetal tissue, White Coat Waste and Pro-Life San Francisco uncovered $115 million in taxpayer funds being used for another 200 projects by other groups using aborted fetuses for their testing. In other bizarre Frankenstein study, that's aptly named Frankenstein study, funded by taxpayers, UCSF implanted intact reproductive tracts from 9.5 to 22-week-old human fetuses, including from a pair of aborted twins, into mice dosed with synthetic estrogen, the groups wrote in a joint op-ed for the Washington Examiner. I'm sorry. Let's read that again. They implanted intact reproductive tracts, so uterus, blah blah, from 9.5 to 22-week-old human fetuses. They took the reproductive tracts out of the fetus, including from a pair of aborted twins, into mice. Oh my gosh. Also responding to the findings, Senator Rand Paul's chief strategist, Doug Stafford, told the Gateway Pundit the taxpayers should not be funding these horrors. I should say not. Absolutely not. I don't think anybody should be allowed to do them, much less fund them. This is important work by White Coat Waste and Pro-Life San Francisco to shine a light on the expensive and gross experimentation being done with animals and fetuses. Now we know where Planned Parenthood gets some of their money, don't we? Looks pretty obvious to me anyway. Taxpayers should not have to fund these types of tests that sound something like out of a Mary Shelley novel. The aborted fetuses are taken from university-affiliated hospitals and harvested for research. While the experiments sound like something out of a horror movie, there's huge money in the bizarre and cruel tests. At the University of California, San Diego, faculty received nearly $400,000 in taxpayer funds this year for experiments that involved implanting thymus glands from aborted human babies into mice. The mice with human fetal glands were also injected with human fetal liver cells from 17 to 20-week-old human fetuses. The mice were then killed and dissected. This project has received $2.7 million in taxpayer largesse since 2012 and is scheduled to run through late 2020, their expose continued. In another example of their testing uncovered by the two groups, the USC took kidney tissue from 8 to 18-week-old human fetuses and spent $2.3 million in federal grants comparing it to kidney tissue of fetuses cut from mice. According to a Pew Research poll, 52% of Americans oppose animal testing. I raised my hand, I'm one of them. And a Fox News poll found that 49% oppose testing using aborted fetuses. I'm one of those too. Most Americans oppose animal testing as well as human fetal tissue research. Nobody wants to be forced to pay for this any longer. In a time of such divisiveness in Washington, it's refreshing that Republicans and Democrats, animal lovers and pro-lifers can agree that Uncle Sam should not be wasting tens of millions in taxpayer dollars on disgusting human fetal tissue experiments on animals that we don't like, want, or need. It doesn't matter whether we like, want, or need them. They're still living things. Anthony Bellotti, founder and president of taxpayer watchdog White Coat Waste Project, told the Gateway Pundit. I'd just like to say here that it doesn't matter if they're testing on snakes. They're living things. We all know the history of animal testing where they pour antifreeze down dogs' throats to see if it kills them. They can't just do it to one dog. They got to do it to tens, dozens, or hundreds. You know, like, okay, well, maybe it just killed the one dog, so we should test 99 more to make sure we're on the right track. That's inhumane. That's horrible. And it shouldn't be allowed. I'm with the leftist groups that are trying to stop animal testing. So in that regard, I agree. Thank you, Matt Gaetz. And maybe we'll see some legislation putting all this horrible stuff to rest. And also, here's another article from the Daily Caller. It says Trump cools on expanding background checks. Well, I kind of figured that he was just baiting the left anyway, and never really intended to do it. He just wanted to start a conversation, but that's just my opinion. It says here, President Donald Trump appears to be cooling on expanding gun background checks after conversations with gun rights activists at Bedminster, New York last week. People don't realize we have very strong background checks right now, the president told reporters while leaving New Jersey at the end of his 2-week vacation, adding that he is very, very concerned with the Second Amendment. I just recently come into a situation where I had to do some research, and I looked up Oregon Senate Bill 941. What it basically does is it expands background checks to private person-to-person sales. Now, since the implementation of that law in 2015, Oregon residents that are a person selling a gun to another person, family or whatever, they have to go immediately, quote, immediately from the text into the police department, nearest police department, where they fill out a transfer paperwork, and the police will run a background check right then and there before a man can sell a handgun to his neighbor or his uncle or nephew or whatever the case. So Oregon's, and they register your handgun at the time, they register your weapon at the time. So Oregon basically has already done this. They've already made it illegal to sell a handgun without doing the registered paperwork and background checks. Oregon has background checks for private person-to-person sales as of 2015. The president initially seemed well positioned to take action on gun control after back-to-back mass shootings in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, both of which we know are, one of which was actually drug-fueled by psychotropic drugs. The other one, well, we all do our research, so I don't need to tell you about that. White House officials held meetings with Connecticut Democrat Senator Chris Murphy, who backs an assault weapon ban, and Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey, and West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. who support expanding background checks. Well, I don't know how much more they can expand them in. Background checks, everything, any transaction with a handgun is already, has a background check on it. So what else can they background check? Let's get real. There's an appetite, and I mean a very strong appetite, for background checks, Trump said shortly after the shootings. Well, personally, I think we ought to find out if people are on psychotropic drugs, for one thing, if they spent time in a mental hospital, or if their, quote, therapist, unquote, has any ties or links to the CIA. But that's another matter. That's just me. Background checks, it says here, currently apply to all sales through federally licensed gun dealers, but do not apply to private sales or trades. That's where this Daily Caller article is mistaken, at least in the case of Oregon. Senate Bill 941, 2015. Okay, they said they would expand background checks to unlicensed sales over the internet or at gun shows, but would exempt sales between friends and family members. They needed to put would exempt sales between friends and family members in quotes for now. Stricter Democratic-backed measures would force background checks every time a gun even temporarily changes hands. Yeah, and like they're not planning on that as their next step. Trump may have been swayed from such policies by the National Rifle Association. Let me point out here at the top here, this is the Daily Caller. So, automatically they're saying that, the NRA must have swayed him. I don't believe that. I believe that the president put that out there just to see what people would say about it. I don't think he intends on infringing on our Second Amendment rights in any way. But that doesn't mean he can't bait them and goat them, does it? Actually, I kind of sitting back and enjoying the show, and everybody thinking that they're going to get what they want when they're not. So, Representative Matt Gaetz slamming taxpayers' money being spent on human-animal experiments, and Trump and his positions on expanding background checks. Those are both for our news today. You guys hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't. I've managed to get up to 115 subscribers, and I thank all 115 of you. And I'd like to be able to put out some more videos in the future, and maybe expand to a few other things, like maybe advertising for some small advertisers that are trying to get a leg up. Those advertisers mainly that the Google, YouTube industry won't allow to advertise on their platform. I'm considering doing some advertising for those people, pretty much in the in line with what Martin Brodell is doing on his channel, and so look forward to a few changes. I'm still getting some experience here and getting used to how this all works, and I'll keep bringing you articles and information that I think is important. Please stop by again. Have a nice day.